Okay, so one of my favorite modifiers for a split squat is to elevate the front foot. So front foot elevated split squats, or FFE for short, are really helpful for getting super deep into that split squat for anybody that might have less than stellar hip mobility. But why they work isn't super intuitive. In fact, the front foot elevation actually has more to do with what's happening with the back leg than what's happening with the front one. So let's look here at a traditional split squat. We're moving forward and down to maximize depth in that front leg. But what you might not realize until you try these is that getting deep into the front leg puts a big stretch on your back leg. So keeping your back knee off the ground is important because, well, once the knee hits the ground, the rep is sort of over. You can't go any deeper. So by keeping your back knee off the ground, it stays out of the way so you can get as deep as you want to in that front leg. That's great, but by keeping it off the ground, that back leg has to reach way back behind you, and that's not easy. So look at the angle of our torso relative to that back femur here. That's some pretty serious hip extension that, frankly, very few of us ever practice, which is why so many of us have such tight hips. Now, if you lack the necessary mobility to get into this posture, you either can't get as deep as you want, or you have to really arch your back or lean forward to kind of take pressure off of that hip stretch. And none of those options are ideal. Here's where that front foot elevation comes into play. Now, we're going to show you here with a riser that's a little on the tall side here. Not everybody needs to use one that's quite this high off the ground, but it does help with the visuals for our example here. So look how the back leg behaves when your front foot is a few inches off the ground. Notice how the femur now doesn't have to reach quite as far back behind you. It's pointing a little more downward, which means a more forgiving angle across the front of your hip, so not quite as intense of a stretch. And still, same great depth in that front knee. So the front foot being elevated is really more about how it makes things easier on the back leg more than it is anything else. Now, there's one thing here that's worth clarifying. One of the great things about split squats is they can fix lots of stuff. In fact, getting a little bit of a stretch on the back leg is a good thing. It's kind of a nice bonus to foster some additional mobility while you're getting such great work in with the front leg. So a bit of a stretch is great. We just don't want it to be so tight that you have to start cutting corners in other places. So when you use that front foot elevation, you don't have to go so high that your back leg feels nothing at all. A little stretch is a good thing. It's about finding the right line where you get just a bit of a stretch, but you can still get nice and deep and keep your lower back where we want it. So that's it for front foot elevated split squats. Finding the right elevation depends on the individual, about how flexible you are, about how long your legs are, stuff like that. Usually about 3 to 4 inches is a good place to start, but you can kind of play around with it and go higher or lower as you need to. I hope this helps, and happy squatting to you.